Energy Magick, it's really the way I've been doing magic for the last 10, 15 years. I think we've all toned things down way too much. What the energy is tied to, our energetic cells are tied to our emotions. If we tone things down too much energetically, we're toning things down too much emotionally, and there's not going to be spiritual meaning, and those emotions connect us to each other. You would have this white candle that was completely charged with the energy of the 4 major archangels. This candle would act like a floodlight. It would act like a flare, and if there's any negative influence in an area, it would be gone. You get a bunch of people looking at a bonfire. Fire still gives us the sense of primal wonder. Magic is shaped by intention, and it's shaped by attention. People can say, oh, it's just energy. It's not my physical body. It's not hurting me. Your energetic health does coordinate with your physical health and vice versa. It's all about connection. We're all spiritually connected. If we buy into this illusion, this lie that we're disconnected, it's going to create mental, physical, spiritual problems.
Hello, and welcome to the Pagan Portal Podcast, produced by Moonbooks Publishing and presented by me, Rachel Patterson. Very pleased to welcome today writer, teacher, author, spiritual alchemist, all manner of wonderful things, Mark NeCamp. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's so great to be on here.
Now, you have, looking at your website, you have a whole list of things that you do. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just to introduce.
My name is Mark NeCamp Jr. I'm located here in the United States, specifically New York State region. And I do, as Rachel said, quite a lot of things. So for my day job, I actually do sales and marketing. So that takes up, of course, a good chunk of my time. Now, that's the boring stuff. You don't want me to do you hear on the podcast talk about sales and marketing.
I have a boring day job too. We have to pay the bills, don't we?
That being said, I'm probably working an extra 40 hours a week on everything else. And everything else is writing. I have my first book out, Energy Magick. I have about 4, maybe actually 7 other books I'm working on at the moment right now. I write a lot of articles. I also have students all around the country that I help. I also go to different places, and if you go to my website, I have all sorts of classes from everything from, I used to teach tarot. I don't teach tarot as much, but I do teach spiritual alchemy, energy magic, energy healing, all manner of esoteric subjects. I'm kind of like the Swiss Army knife of magic and the occult. So if there's something you're ever interested in, I've probably done a great deal of study on it, to be quite honest.
We always learn, don't we? We never stop learning.
We have to keep learning. And what's the great thing is I learned one thing and then it kind of piggybacks on another, and they enhance each other. So it's really a lot of fun.
Spiritual journeys never go in a straight line, do they?
No. They're all kind of messy, right? And that's fun. I mean, if your spiritual journey is a little messy and you're not getting your hands dirty, I would.
So where did your spiritual journey begin then?
Really going back, I would say it started when I was a kid. So the kind of like the spiritual soil that I grew within, if you will, is my parents, my mother and my mother's side of the family grew up Catholic. Now, the Catholicism where I grew up is a lot different from a lot of people. So I'm half African American, and I grew up in the African American community, and so there's very much of, to make a very broad generalization, African American spirituality is a little bit more ecstatic than other branches. So you're thinking, okay, I grew up in an African-American Catholic church. Well, the Black Catholic Church, it was more like, I had like a gospel choir. It was very passionate, very ecstatic. But we had like Catholic Mass. But I also grew up about 1.5 or 2 miles. I think it's about 2 miles. I think it's about 1.5 miles. Or that would be 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers. I always get the things mixed up.
That's maths. I don't do maths.
Yeah, I don't read the maths. From the largest spiritual candle store in the Midwest. And my mother's, who always had a very passing interest in the occult and magic. And as a kid, we always used to watch horror movies. And I watched too many gory horror movies, a lot younger than I should have, to be quite honest. But we would go to this candle store, and it was a hoodoo candle store. And hoodoo is, of course, a combination, comes from a lot of African Americans, magic that slaves brought over. So like African folk magic. So I went to this hoodoo candle store as a kid. I was like, oh, there's a candle here for hexing or, uncrossing or for creating a peaceful home. There's all like magical candles. And, it was always very like tantalizing and amazing to me growing up. And eventually, as I got older, I started asking questions, and there's an old man named Goldfinger, and he had like a gold tooth. And he's like, okay, kid, you seem really interested. Let me teach you some things. So I started learning about hoodoo and folk magic. Now, in the back of the church, there are these old ladies that had these very colorful necklaces. And I didn't put two and two together till years later, but they're all initiates of like Santeria. So that was kind of going on in my backyard as well. Now, as I grew up, I kind of split from the Catholic Church a little bit, well, a lot of it. And then I started studying everything from Tibetan Buddhism. One of my best friends growing up was Hindu, and I would go to one of the Hindu temples on a regular basis. Did study like, shamanism, especially like the core shamanism of Michael Harner, which was popular at the time. And then I even started studying some grimoires a little bit. So I really had this rich background. And then eventually I ran into some people that were Wiccan and that ran actually a pagan store in the town I was living in when I'd moved away from home and I got older. And so then I joined my first coven, and that opened me up to, energy healers and druids and ceremonial magicians and all sorts of people. And everyone in this community was like, oh, you seem pretty smart, but we don't quite know what you are. What are you? And I said, I don't know. I'm me. So they were just kept throwing stuff at me, and I just kept grabbing all these balls and juggling them. And they're like, oh, okay, so you're kind of good at a little bit of everything. But all those different perspectives and schools of magic, they really taught me to put things in perspective. And then also, I had a background, like I said, in energy healing. And one of my first teachers was a chakra and energy healer, and of course, I'm a Reiki practitioner at this point. And what I noticed is that everything had an energetic effect. So the seeds for that were kind of put down then, but when I was older and doing more work on clients and people that needed my help, because for some weird reason, the gods, the universe, everybody you want to call the powers that be, they'll put people in my path that need help, and I used to be the only person that helps them. So, one day my mom was saying, oh, the people down the road are having problems. I think their house might be haunted. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, Mom. Yeah, whatever. Then, of course, 2 days later, those people say, hey, my house is haunted and I don't know what to do. Do you know anybody? My mom just like, Bar?
So, are you busy?
Yeah, are you busy? You got anything? So do you want to de-hauntify a house? Oh, sure, Mom. I'll go de-hauntify the haunted ex-drug house and let's see what things could happen. Yeah, nothing bad can happen. But going back to my kind of magical education, I really learned that everything had an energetic effect. So if I was doing energy healing on someone, or if I was doing like a healing ritual, like with a coven, or if I was lighting a candle and doing a healing spell with a candle, with simple candle magic, I realized everything kind of had the same effect. So I said, that's kind of weird, right? That's kind of interesting. And no one ever really talked about that because everyone was really, hyper-focused on their own school of magic and their own way of doing things. And then gradually I said, well, I don't really need the candles as much. I really don't need all these tools. And I started doing things just working with energy. And that's really energy magic, kind of like the little secret about the book is it's really the way I've been doing magic for at least the last, 10, 15 years. And I really wanted to get this book just out of my head, not only so I could kind of say, okay, this is how I practice magic. This is like my core magical beliefs and workings, but also, okay, now that it's out of my head, now I can focus on learning more things. And
you need to make some space.
I did. I really need, and it was in a weird way not to, it was literally like pulling something out of my head. I was like, okay, I've got to get this out of my head. And I was like frantically writing, especially like towards the end. It's like, okay, I can't wait to get this book out, get this book done. So
I think it's really important for me. Energy is the base of all magic. It is everything. It's where everything comes from. And I think it's very under-advertised, if that makes sense.
It is. It really is. I think in a lot of ways we all get caught up on the tools. And now granted, even though I wrote this book on energy magic, I do love tools. I mean, like behind me, I have my Hecate altar, and you can't barely see it, but there's like a ring, and that holds like a ring of keys. And I use keys in a lot of magic, actually. Actually, I think I can reach over my altar. I could show you my new tool. Oh yeah, I got a new brass key. So I'm always collecting keys. So, but I do a lot of magic with those. I have, of course, various swords, athames, probably my main magical tool I use when I'm doing like really like spiritual work where I have to dehauntify a house or get rid of negative spirits or entities or energy. I have a furba, which is a Tibetan dagger, which is triangular. So I've got all sorts of fun tools. But what I did notice, especially while I was writing the book, is that when I really combined my energy practice with the tools even more so, like with more purpose, I was able to actually kind of supercharge my magic. And I really kind of brought things up a notch. So it's not that I'm anti-tool by any stretch, but I realize that, like, as you said, magic is really the base. I mean, energy is really the basis for everything. So if you can, now I would say this to any practitioner that's listening, if you can, and this isn't just a shameless plug for my book, but, shameless plug, shameless plug, shameless plug. But if you can figure out how to cultivate your own energy and marry your energy practice to whatever tools that you're using, it's going to work way better. It's the results aren't going to be 1 + 1. It's going to be 1 + 1 = 10. I mean, it's just going to skyrocket.
I think I've seen so many practitioners. I've been at rituals. I've seen people working spells that are just saying the words or going through the actions, and there's no energy behind it. It's mad.
It really is. And I thought that was kind of something endemic to the United States, especially going to a lot of like public rituals. People go to create, and I've done a lot of public rituals, so I'm not trying to cast aspersions on anyone or put anyone down. But when someone's trying to do public rituals, they need to do things as approachable as possible. And so, of course, you don't want the energies to be too intense or too overwhelming. However, I feel that almost everyone, including myself, and I've done it myself, I think we've all toned things down way too much. I think we've said like, oh no, the energy's gonna be too much for Sam, who just came here and joined the circle and who's been pagan or Wiccan for 5 minutes. Oh no, we don't want the energy too much, and they are gonna freak out. I think we've all kind of kicked things a notch too far. But I think there's no reason that we can't teach people how to be energetically responsible and handle basic energies and magic. I mean, I've gone to rituals where they've been very, very relaxed, and it'll be something like Samhain, for example. And someone will say, oh, my grandfather just died, and they'll be overwhelmed by the energy of grief. And even if it's a toned down ritual, someone's going to bring their own energy. They're going to bring their own baggage to ritual. And I don't think anyone can really account for all of that. I think we just have to say, let's just do it. Let's just bring the energy back up and let's do something of meaning. Because, of course, what the energy is tied to, our energetic selves are tied to our emotions. And so I fear, not just as practitioners or even as spiritual leaders try to do spiritual things for our communities, is that if we tone things down too much energetically, we're toning things down too much emotionally. And there's not going to be spiritual meaning. And those emotions connect us to each other. Those emotions connect us to the gods. They connect us to the earth. They connect us to the spirits. So if we tone down things too much, we're not using energy, well, then we're probably not using emotions. And then our practices are just going to get more and more shallow. And that's a crime, because there's so much rich magic. I mean, I can, obviously in England, there's like so many rich cultural histories going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. I mean, it blows my mind. I have friends, of course, like in India, in Eastern Europe, all sorts of places. And there's all these spiritual traditions that are amazing and rich and beautiful. And it would be a disservice to not put our energy into them and not connect them and not be excited about magic.
I mean, you mention in your book, you give the quote, which I love, energy is the heart of magic. And that we could wrap it up there, actually, because that kind of that just sums it up for me. And I think it is something that's really important. So your book that's written all about energy magic it's precious, because I think there's a lot of people that will gain a huge amount from it, because I think there are a lot of people that are working magic, that are doing the ritual, that are following the pathway and aren't tapping into that energy. It's a shame, a crying shame. So if we look at starting to work magic, and there are a lot of people that are new to the pathway, there are a lot of people, I think, as well, that could probably benefit from refreshers. And a lot of people, even myself, have been walking the pathway for, since dinosaurs. I think it's good to refresh sometimes. I think it's good to go back to the basics. So your Energy Magick book covers everything from basics to more advanced. So it'll be useful for anyone and everyone. But was there something that prompted you to write it other than getting it out of your head?
I really wanted to give back to the community in a lot of ways. And that's something that's a big theme of, especially my work more recently, is I had all these great teachers. So for example, there's this, I'll just tell a brief story. So in the community I was working in, there's a practitioner named Dr. Savage. Okay. And Dr. Savage has passed. And he was a professor. He was actually a university professor. He was a minister. And he was the most amazing ceremonial magician that you've never heard of. Like anyone, like if you read any book on ceremonial magic and you think, wow, that person's really cool, that person's really knowledgeable, that person has presence, and they're very wise, I can promise you they look almost like idiots compared to Dr. Savage. He was the real deal, and he was humble, and he never wrote a book. And he did this technique, which I pass on, and I'll probably put this in like another book. But what he did was he would take a candle, a simple 7-day candle, the glass candle, and he would evoke, he would bring out call to presence the 4 major archangels, Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and then he would, after evoking them, he would invoke them into a candle. And so what you would have is you would have this, typically a white candle, you would have this white candle that was completely charged with the energy of the 4 major archangels. And so if you have this candle and you lit the candle, this candle would act like a floodlight. It would act like a flare. And if there's any negative influence in an area, it would be gone. And it's a very simple technique. It's extremely simple. It's elegant though. And it's extremely effective. And I've taught it to people, and I've had people who've been practitioners for, months. I've taught them this technique, and it's been extremely effective. And I'm ashamed at my community for not working with Dr. Savage more and trying to get his knowledge out to the world, because he was an amazing practitioner, and he had hundreds of things like that are lost, Rachel, just lost. So I wanted to give back and, not only give credit to some of my mentors, like a lot of our past, but really put things forward for the next generation. I see so many books out, and I was very, very fortunate. The gods really blessed me with the background that I had, and I wanted to bring that blessing forward.
It's sharing, isn't it? For me, a big part of the craft is sharing experiences, sharing knowledge with others. We all learn from each other.
Exactly. I mean, it's a basic spiritual fact that we're all connected.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, isn't that the main thing about being pagan or Wiccan or a witch, is that we're all connected spiritually, that, we're all very pantheistic, as in there's no division between the creator and the created. It is all the same thing. We are all the universe. It's all one thing that we're a part of, and we have a responsibility to make the world as awesome and fun and good and healed as much as possible.
Absolutely. So you mentioned students. If someone wanted to start working magic, and I know this is all in the book, so go and buy the book, basically. But if someone wanted to start working magic, what are the basics? Where should they begin?
Well, I would, of course, say start with energy practices. And, of course, kind of going back to how I structured the book, I did structure the book it's really 2 books in one, right? It's, a basic and an advanced guide, but all the stuff that's in the basic part are all very much core things that every practitioner should master to some degree. And this is, energy work, basic healing, basic psychic self-defense, meditation. So that's really a lot of the core places to start, just those basics, because every spiritual path, it will make use of those one way or another. And especially things like meditation. I mean, every spiritual, whether you're pagan or occultist or Buddhist or Hindu or Christian mystic whatever you are, you're going to have to meditate one way or another. You're going to have to find a way to center yourself, and then from using that centerness as a foundation to, connect to other things.
So connection is a good word. Connection is, for me, that's almost as important as energy, whether you're connecting with the earth, plants, the sky, the sun, the moon, whatever it might be. Now, you give some good exercises in the book about connecting with energy, but actually one of the questions I am often asked is how does someone connect with that energy? And if they find it difficult, are there any tips you can suggest?
Sure. That's a really, really good question. So I would say, I think the thing that, and I'm very much guilty of this, so I'm not speaking from some ivory tower here, is I think we all get caught up in what magic is. We'll get caught up in the trappings. And I'd like to invite everyone just for a moment, imagine that you're thousands of years ago, that you're kind of like a Neolithic person, and thousands of years ago, there's no tools, there's no word of magic. It's just you living off the land, like with the tribe of people. Okay. So just kind of go back and imagine that. So you're here with just you and the elements, and you're going to see things like a forest fire. You're going to see things like lightning. You'll see the sun rise and set. You might see the ocean. And there's going to be this cultivation of wonder and this cultivation of awe at the natural environment. It's very simple. I mean, if you gather around a group of people and you start a fire, regardless of what spirituality they have, regardless of how emotionally or spiritually advanced they are, you get a bunch of people looking at a bonfire, everyone's like, ooh, fire. Fire still gives us the sense of primal wonder. And it's like that. I mean, we have a very natural instinct to appreciate natural beauty. And I would say that that cultivating wonder and awe at the natural environment, but also at everything, that's probably one of the biggest magical things you can do. That magic, of course, energy is the heart of magic. And I would argue that the heart of energy is motion. So as my mother always said, if you can't feel it, you can't heal. And it's that with magic. If you're not feeling it, you can't do it. Now, one exercise I have some exercises on like connecting to the sun and connecting to the moon. And as I've kind of reread the book and I'm kind of going through it again, I realized that I probably didn't strike home that point of cultivating wonder and awe enough. So that's something I definitely want to put in like different editions, or, I'll let you on a little secret. I am working on sequels to Energy Magick. So it's actually a 3-part series. So, 3.5. It gets complicated. But basically for Moon Books, it's a trilogy. Poor Trevor. Trevor has no idea. But
he'll cope. He's a legend.
I know. Trevor's amazing. I love him. And but that being said, cultivating wonder and awe, not just at the natural world, but there's also human nature. And I do believe humans are inherently good. And so, doing good things, connecting to people, seeing the inherently good in things. So just kind of going a little of a tangent, magic is shaped by intention, and it's shaped by attention. So, let's say I'm looking at Rachel and I say, wow, Rachel is wearing a really beautiful pink blouse. So what I'm doing is I'm putting energy into I'm perceiving something that Rachel has as beautiful. And then I'm pushing energy. I'm giving energy to this idea that Rachel has something that's beautiful. Now, if I keep focusing on all the beautiful things about Rachel, this would kind of enhance, magically speaking, this would enhance Rachel's beauty. And I talk about this in the book in the last part. The third part is the energetic grimoire. I talk about basic glamour. Now, if you're looking at yourself and you're projecting your sense of beauty upon yourself and creating this positive feedback loop, you can make yourself more energetically beautiful and project that beauty out. This works with everything. So I just want everyone to think about this real quick, that there's someone in traffic that cuts you off. You project negative energy to them. If someone gives you a compliment, they're projecting positive energy to you. If you're in university, you're listening to a lecture and you're giving attention to the professor, you're giving that person energy. Energy isn't everywhere in what we focus. And it's not just about the act of focusing, it's how we focus. It's how we believe. And as such, we can obviously make the world a better place by helping our perception. But here's kind of the scary part. Everyone does magic. Every person that isn't a witch, isn't an occultist, isn't a druid, what have you, everyone does magic. And so this is kind of circling back to another question, why did I write the book? There are so many people that do magic and don't realize it. Magic is, as I think it was Matt Oren talks about magic as the birthright of everyone. And I completely agree with that concept, because people can be the symptoms of a curse even if that person doesn't do magic, just by someone throwing negative energy at you. That's why I think like psychic shielding is so important. But all that being said, witchcraft and magic are getting more and more popular. Okay? So that means that kind of like the base number of magical practitioners is going to raise, which means that our awareness of magic is going to raise, which means even the people that aren't doing magic, it's going to get out there and raise that kind of magical vibration more and more. So honestly, I would rather have thousands, hundreds of thousands of trained practitioners as opposed to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of untrained practitioners doing all sorts of crazy things and affecting the world. So that's kind of another reason I wanted to write the book is, energy is so relatable. I mean, I literally will go to a bookstore or a restaurant and they'll say, obviously I'm very extroverted, and they'll say, oh, what do you do? And I'll say, I'll ask what they do, and we'll have a conversation, just witty banter. And I'll say, I'm an occultist. They're like, what do you mean? Like, I work with magic. What's magic? And then I'll do like the energy ball exercise, which is the first exercise in the book, where I basically have everyone rub their hands together, put their hands apart, put them slowly together without touching, and form an energy ball. And I will do this. I've literally done this hundreds of times, Rachel.
I teach my students the same thing. It's a classic. Yeah,
classic. And I do this to mundane people all the time.
Yeah.
And they're astounded. And they're like, wow, I can do that? Like, yes, everyone can. So the other thing about doing energy magic is it creates a language. And I've noticed it creates a international language of magic. Kind of like how back in the day when everyone was writing occult text in Latin, and, someone in Spain or England could say, oh, I'm not Spanish or I'm not British, but I can read this occult or magical text because in Latin, everyone's writing in Latin. In the same way, energy is kind of like the Latin of magic.
I think you can see, can't you? You compliment someone in the street and it puts a smile on their face. You can see the energy happening before your eyes.
Yeah, it's amazing. But cultivating that sense of wonder and awe, not just within nature, but with human nature, with ourselves, cultivating the goodness in other people and acknowledging it, and then creating this positive feedback loop as in, I perceive someone's goodness, and then I project that goodness out, and then I recognize their goodness, and it comes to me, and we can create these positive feedback loops. And this is where it goes into concepts of spiritual alchemy, where we become, quote unquote, the philosopher's stone. The idea of the philosopher's stone is it's the change agent that can make gold. Now, we can all do that. We can all have the philosophy of the philosopher's stone by what I just said, having this very simple feedback loop of positivity to make our normal interactions better. And of course, it's a ripple effect, right? I mean, energy in a lot of ways, it's like water. We're all kind of swimming in a public pool. You have public pools in England, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I thought so, but forgive my ignorance.
No, yes, we do.
So like,
but
if I go to
generally outside, we don't have the weather for the outside ones, but we do have indoor ones.
Okay. We have indoor and outdoor ones, but just imagine you're going to a public pool and, not to be crude, but there's going to be one kid who's not going to get out of the pool to use the bathroom, right? There's always that one kid.
Thank you for that image.
That's that one kid, always that one kid. And we don't want to be the person using it, going in the pool, metaphor. We want to make the pool, which is our collective energy, as clean, as pure, as good as possible. So energy magic isn't just about doing magic, folks. It's a philosophy.
I'm never going to get in a pool again.
It's always that one kid, Rachel, and if you don't think there is, you're including yourself.
You talk about a lot of the different areas of energy, auras being one of them. Do you think it's important to be able to see or feel authors, both, either? I must admit, I don't see auras, but I do feel them. Do you think that's an important part of energy work?
I think it's extremely important. So one of the easy things is everyone has, an aura is very, in a lot of ways, a protective layer, over yourself, So it's the outer layer, it's the outer shell of your energetic body. So as such, it's going to get hit with things. So feeling your own aura, knowing how to heal it, how to be aware of it, that's just going to be really good for your own personal sense of, shall we call it, psychic hygiene, magical hygiene. Just your well-being. And of course, our immune system, like if we're not eating well, if we're not sleeping well, if we're not taking care of our physical bodies, our immune systems are going to have a really difficult time fighting off the common cold, right? In a very similar way, if we're not taking care of our energetic bodies, and the aura is very much our psychic self-defense, our psychic immune system, well, then we're going to be the victim of who knows what sorts of energies. And of course, people can say, oh, it's just energy. It's not my physical body. It's not hurting me. Well, here's the thing, folks. Everything's connected. Your energetic health does coordinate with your physical health and vice versa. The other thing is, it really contributes to your mental health. If the heart of energy is emotion, we're really talking about your emotional and very much so your psychological health. So by working with things energetically, you are going to affect your mental health one way or another. So that's the thing. The point I really want to drive home is it's not just about our physical well-being, and energy does affect our physical, but it's also about our mental and emotional well-being.
Now, you also mentioned a phrase that I was unfamiliar with, but I loved, energy sculpting.
Yes.
Do you want to explain for our listeners the meaning behind that?
With energy sculpting, it's the idea of kind of taking the energy ball. So if energy is everywhere, okay, all over the place, I can literally just grab the energy from my environment and I can just focus it with my hands, okay? But then here's kind of the weird thing. Every form follows function, and I actually got this from studying biology a long time ago. So if form follows function, well, that means the way I shape energy is going to affect the energy. So if I'm shaping energy into a cube, that is going to promote energy more of a solid foundation. So even if I'm just meditating with energy, if I'm just grabbing and sculpting a bunch of energy and creating a cube, and I'm meditating on this cube of energy, this will, believe it or not, actually promote more solidity, more stability in one's life. Now, you can also do things such as if I'm doing, so I was walking down a street at night. This is when I was younger, and I was adventuring with some friends, and I was maybe in a dodgy part of town I shouldn't have been into. And what I did was I sculpted my aura so that I had spikes, and I had these giant spikes on my aura. I looked like a giant spiky ball of black energy that no one wanted to mess with. And I literally had some pretty dangerous people look at me. They're like, and they just kept on walking. And it's because even though they were at a distance, we can still perceive energy with our eyes. We can still feel energy through our eyes, believe it or not, and if not from a distance. So the way that we feel energy is, of course, it can be very specific to people, but everyone can feel energy from a distance one way or another. And as such, just by shaping and sculpting my own aura, I was able to do a little bit of not so psychic defense, more like physical defense, and stop, really keeping myself safe. So we can sculpt our aura, we can sculpt our energy around us. When I'm doing shall we call it psychic surgery? So let's say, if energy is everywhere, and I was talking about the aura being a psychic immune system, well, then we can also talk about energetic parasites and how those are created. That's a whole different conversation. That's a whole different podcast. But let's just assume real quick that there are these energetic parasites. There's kind of like the energetic equivalent of the common cold someone can get. It's like we go to a room and you come out of that room and you feel icky. You just feel not so good. Let's just say you're you might get a parasite, or you might just get some negative energy. Okay, let's call it negative energy. But what you can do is, let's just say that negative energy really gets into you. Okay, and let's say it either a parasite's created within you, or you did get like a nasty parasite. And I could tell you horror stories. I mean, stuff of nightmares.
The swimming pool was horror enough, thank you.
yeah. I don't want to give you nightmares, Rachel. I mean, if you want to know the horror stories, I mean, I've read real life horror stories from Magick. I mean, your listeners would oh my God, it's a whole different book, whole different podcast. But needless to say, it's sometimes when I'm doing energy healing, it's not just about like projecting energy on someone's chakra or something, or doing energy healing. It's more that I'm literally going to have to make an incision in someone's aura, and I'm going to have to go in there and I'm going to have to remove some stuff. And as such, I will literally, it's very simple, just like that, like sculpt my fingers into like scalpels. And I can just do like, and then literally I can just like take the energy from my aura. I feel like I'm doing the party trick of like, where's my thumb? But literally you can just like grab the aura on your fingers and just extend it. And then you'll feel that. You'll feel that you could actually make like scalpels or knives or things like that. Now, these applications, of course, the sky's the limit. You're in terms of it's all about your imagination. You're only limited by your imagination. So here I'm sculpting my aura to like make, psychic scalpels to like help heal someone. But, if you're an unsavory practitioner, of course, you can easily just like manipulate energy and sculpt it. And let's say there was someone annoying on that I didn't like, if I was being unethical, I could easily sculpt energy, and I could just put like a lance through someone's throat chakra, and they're going to feel very uncomfortable. So there's different things we can do to sculpt energy. Now, of course, going into the advanced part of the book, I talk about thought forms, and thought forms or servitors. They're really like artificial spirits. They're spirits that you can create. And one of the methods I do enjoy in making artificial spirits is I will literally grab energy and I will literally sculpt it like I'm a sculptor. And then from there, then I'll animate it through my intention and my consciousness. So there's lots of great ways you can use energy sculpting very simply. Now, even if I kind of go back to where I was talking about Dr. Savage's, we called it angelic dynamite. So what you could even do theoretically is you could sculpt energy and you could put your intention into it. And for like let's say like, of course, like a healing candle, I'm going to use a really simple, harmless example. I can sculpt that sort of energy. I can literally put my intentions into my hands, and then I can take that candle and I can charge that candle with that energy that I've sculpted. Or I could even create an artificial spirit of healing, put that into the candle, and that little artificial spirit of healing will last for the duration of that candle, for example.
It's kind of like, I get a lot of people when they're making spells or enchanting ingredients for spells. That's kind of, that step gets missed out quite a lot, doesn't it? I think let's just throw all this stuff in here, we'll put it in a pouch, they are spell done. But they've missed out the step you were just talking about enchanting, about putting that energy into it.
Right. So there's a story. I like to work with the thought forms, and one of the things I'll do is I'll make an artificial spirit and I'll put it in a statue. And I'm not a good sculptor. I'm not an artist. Okay. So don't think, oh, wow, Mark's going to make this really cool looking golem and it's going to look amazing. No, it's going to look like what your 5-year-old made with like Play-Doh. Okay. It's going to look like crap. But what I'll do is I'll make the little statue out of clay, and then I'll enchant it with an artificial spirit, to do a certain thing. But what I do, I don't just create my artificial spirit and put it into the golem, okay? I'll actually take the clay and I'll pray over it, and I'll give it energy, and I'll enchant that. Because the more layers of energy you have, the more complexity there is, the more effective it's going to be. So even if I'm doing something with herbs, and of course, I've got a background in hoodoo. So let's say I'm making like a pouch. Let's say I'm doing a spell where I'm putting some herbs and stones in a pouch for something. Let's say I'm doing something protective. Let's just do something harmless, right? So maybe I'll take a pouch and I'll take, some herbs, and every single herb I'll hold in my hand, and I'll give that energy and I'll enchant it. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm working with the energy that's in that herb already. I'm not taking away that energy, but what I'm doing is I'm programming it as if like each of those ingredients was like a robot, and I'm programming it with that intention. I'm going to put my intention in each one of those herbs. So let's say I'm doing like, I've got like my pouch. I've enchanted my pouch. Okay. I said, this pouch is a container. This pouch will hold in protection. This pouch will, transmit this protective energy to whoever I'm giving this to. So I've enchanted a pouch. I'm going to take herbs. I'm going to enchant each herb. And so let's say I've enchanted like 6 herbs or something. And then I've got some stones, and maybe I'll put in some like tiger's eye, because like tiger's eye is very protective. And I like tiger's eye. I got tiger's eye, like bracelets. And so I'm enchanting that stone, and then I'm putting that in there. And then I'm going to seal up the bag. And then I'm going to enchant that bag. And maybe I'll even say a prayer or pray to a different deity or something. And as I'm sealing that bag. So that little pouch, I literally I have the pouch, the herbs, the stones, the act of creation of tying it together. I've already put in all this energy. So for me, what might take some practitioners like 5 minutes, I'm just going to be honest, I might actually take an hour making something magically, because I'm putting so much energy into it. And then if I give it to someone, they're like, whoa, this feels heavy. Like, what's going on here? But I found what makes magic really effective is not just putting in your intention and paying attention to that thing, but kind of going to tools and spellcraft, working with the energy of that inherent magical ingredient, and then tying everything together.
That, for me, that's how it should work. If you're going to go to the effort of working magic, do it properly. Put some effort, put some time, put some thought into it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not expensive. I mean, you can get a few herbs, go to the grocery store, get kitchen herbs. You can, honestly, if you can't afford like a fancy stone at a metaphysical store, you can pick up some stones on the road and just like enchant them. If you can't find a bag to put stuff in, just get like a cloth tea bag. Those are like very cheap, or
envelope.
Even like a piece of cloth and like some needle and a thread. I mean, you could spend just a few dollars on something very simple. Magic doesn't have to be expensive, but what makes magic rich and powerful is the energy you put into it, the effort.
Absolutely. You use the word alchemy quite a lot, and you talk about energetic alchemy and a 4-step process, which I was fascinated by. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So I've been studying alchemy for quite a few years. I study a lot of the work of Dennis William Hawk. He's an American alchemist. He does a lot of great work. I highly recommend his books. For my studies in alchemy, there's different stages of alchemy. So when I teach alchemy, I like to say that you have something like the 4 elements, or the 10 suffer on the tree of life, or you have all these different like metaphysical things that we work with, 7 chakras, whatever, or 12. Depends on what system, of course, that people like to use. But the point I want to make here is that I like to view these things, like the elements or the chakras, as like nouns. But I view alchemy as like a verb. So alchemy is like more of a process. It's dynamic. So as such, alchemists have talked about different stages of alchemy. And alchemy is really, to really, really break it down, it's a magical science of transformation. To put it very, very simple. And I kind of get a little frustrated when people toss the word alchemy along, like all over the place, and they're thinking, oh, it's just combining things. Like, I'm going to do this sort of alchemy of combining things. And it's really wrong in a lot of ways, because alchemy is about transformation. So I would just say, I'm not trying to like shame anyone or make anyone feel bad, but if you are going to use the word alchemy, please at least acknowledge that it's about transformation, not just about throwing stuff together. So that's my little soapbox. I'm done. I'm done preaching.
We all have them.
Okay. That's my one of my little. I don't have a lot of pet peeves. So that's just a very slight one. So, but as such, we can talk about a 4-step process of transformation. We can talk about a 7-step process of transformation, which is actually my favorite. There's even a 12-step process, which can go along with the zodiac, which is kind of cool.
Right.
But I work very much with the 4-step and the 7-step process, just because you can do a lot of cool things. As in the 4-step process loosely works out, elementally. The 7-step process can You can do that process over a week because, 7 days in a week, 7-step process of alchemy. So if you want to do like an alchemical working where you want to transform something, you can use like a 7-step. And obviously, of course, I'm working on a book of alchemy that's on like my back burner of projects, but we'll get there. I'll get there one day. But that's not even like one of the books I'm working on right now, which is a shame. I'll get there. But
we'll
anyway,
wait. Okay.
I'll get there. I promise. I have a 13-year plan to write about over 100 books.
Okay, I thought I was busy. That's
No. You should see my spreadsheet. I might show it to you one day on the side. You're like, this guy's insane. Like, where does he sleep?
Yep, pretty much.
I don't sleep.
It's good.
Anyway,
it's good to have goals.
It is. I found the 4-step process of alchemy. 4 is a very easy number to teach in like a workshop. It's very simple. If you want to break things down alchemically over a day, there's 4 stages of a day. There's morning, noon, evening, midnight. Excuse me. Or noon, afternoon, evening, midnight, however you want to put it. But the 4-step process is really easy. And so I talk about that in the book. And the real thing about energetic alchemy is to take energy, whether it's negative, I like to use words more like constructive or not constructive, but have some non-constructive energy, and you can use it to like make things a little bit better. So I'll just kind of go in the 4-step process just real fast. So obviously, but the 4-step process is, let's say I'll make up a name. Let's say John. John's had a bad day, okay? And John is just negative, and he's had a bad day, and his wife is leaving him for the garbage man, and his kids hate him, and he's just this negative person, and his dog got run over, and he's just having a really bad day. He has like all this negative energy, and he brought it to like my space, okay? So that energy, whether I'm working on John's energy directly or the energy that John has left in my room or in my working space, I can transform it, okay? This is how it goes. So the first step of process would be a destruction phase. So negrito. So I like to imagine that even though I'm working with energy, I'm giving energy to you right now as you're listening. That energy has information attached to it. That, I would say I'm giving attention to things and there's intention. Well, that's information, really. And that information gets coded into the energy, okay? So the first step of the alchemical process, or the 4th stage, is to destroy that information. And I like to look at this as, this blackening stage, and in Magick, I'll use a visualization of black flame, that the black flame is destroying all this like information of this energy and just leaving pure energy, okay? So then the next phase will be albedo, which is white. And this will be a stage, the very watery stage, where I'll imagine like white, clear or white waters purifying that energy and then making it whole and making it calm and neutral and useful and good. And so it's a very purifying stage. Then from there, we'll go into citronitis, which is the yellowing stage, or it's even like a golden stage. And I like to liken this almost to like the gold of alchemy in a lot of ways, because in this stage, we're having it blessed. So real quick, someone once asked me, what is evil in paganism? What is evil in magic? And I really had to think about this. Now, I've taken a lot of actually theological classes, and, I'm very skilled in knowledgeable, like all the world's religions. And I've read, of course, countless books on like the problem of evil. This is what a lot of theologians will say, especially Christian ones. They'll talk about the problem of evil. If God is all powerful, why is there evil, right? Different podcasts. But so for me, evil in magic is separation. So there's of course, the inherent spiritual truth that we're all connected, okay? But for me, evil is an illusion. It's the illusion that we're disconnected, because we're not really disconnected. Even if you're going in a cave and meditating, and you're saying, I hate humanity and forget everybody, and, and I'm John and I'm angry in my cave because the wife left me for the garbage man and my dog got run over that day, and I'm just going away from the world. In that way, I would argue that there's an evil there, an inherent evil there of disconnection, that John has disconnected himself from the world disconnecting themselves from nature, from humanity, from life itself. And I think that's a dangerous thing, that not only as practitioners, but just as humans in general. It's all about connection. We're all spiritually connected. And if we buy into this illusion, this lie that we're disconnected, it's going to create dis-ease. It's going to create mental, physical, spiritual problems. So going back to alchemy, I was going here on purpose, everyone.
That makes sense.
That third stage of alchemy is really reconnecting that energy to the divine. It's having that energy blessed by the gods, by the universe, by nature, whatever. But that third stage, that golden stage of alchemy, is really blessing and reconnecting. Now that brings us to the fourth stage, which is Libido, which is a reddening stage. Now this is the phase that it's about taking that energy and I'll integrate it into myself. So if I'm taking like energy in a room that I've gone through like 3 alchemical processes so far, this will be a reddening stage it's more of an earth stage, because what I'm doing is I'm taking that energy and breathing it in, I'm seeping it into my energy, and I'm using it to make myself stronger, more healed, more whole. And I'm reconnecting that energy. So that energy, which in many ways could have caused me to feel disconnected because of it being so heavy or low vibration or negative, however you want to call it, that energy instead has become something that empowers me. It connects me to the divine. It makes me more healthy. It makes me more whole. And so that alchemical process, you can obviously, if you practice it, you have a negative experience with someone, you can just transform someone's energy and it just, boom. It can, I've been doing this for years. So for me, what might take someone like, I don't know, maybe even 10 minutes to like the first time out, I can do this very instinctively. And in the book, of course, every exercise builds upon things. So it's like I start off really simple, but it's really like you're a kid learning the alphabet. So by the end of the book, after you know your alphabet, you can compose like Shakespearean plays, metaphorically speaking. I mean, not to say that we're all the part, but anyway, the point being though is that I do talk about advanced shielding, and in the advanced shielding section, I talk about using energetic alchemy. So you have to master those tools, energetic alchemy, so that if you're creating an alchemical shield, now just imagine now an alchemical shield. I just talked about this 4-step process of alchemy. Just imagine you're in a room, someone's shooting something negative at you, and whatever negative energy is coming at you goes through an alchemical process before it even hits your body. That for me, not to toot my own horn, that's a powerful technique. I mean, that's awesome. And it's a lot of fun. And then of course I talk about the book where you can layer different shields and you do different things. Now, one point I do want to drive home that I wish I drove home more in the book. Yes, this is how I've done magic. I'm presenting all these magical tools. Some are very basic. Some of course are extremely advanced. But if anyone who's listening to this or anyone who reads the book, if they find a better way to do it, by the love of the gods and all that's holy, please do it. I mean, I'm not like the grand poobah of magic, okay? I'm just some guy who's got I like to think some pretty fun ideas. But, if you say, hey, this doesn't quite work, let me tweak it. Please tweak it. These are not like, enshrined holy things that can't be changed. I mean, I want everyone to get their hands dirty. I want everyone to like do magic. I want someone to like, if someone calls me at like 3 a.m. and said, Mark, I've been doing magic for 12 hours and I'm exhausted. And I did like a bunch of stuff from your book and all this sort of crazy stuff happened. And I might need some help. I'll be so happy getting that call at 3 a.m. because I'll know that someone was actually doing magic, that they're actually like having fun. They were doing something. They were trying to use magic to make the world better, make their lives better. I mean, honestly, I've used a lot of these techniques to, how can I say it? I'll put it politely, to fix my life when my life was very broken. But everyone can do that.
Well, yeah, we've got a magical toolkit, haven't we? So
yeah, exactly.
You've got to help yourself as well as helping others, haven't you? You can't, if you're not fixed, you're not going to be able to fix anybody else.
Right. And I'm not like fix. I mean, I'm a work in progress.
Oh yeah, we're all work in progress. I mean, once you start, it's ongoing, isn't it? Yep. Definitely.
Yeah, wait till you see the books I've got coming out the next few years. You'll be like, oh man.
Now, one thing you've covered so many of the questions I was going to ask. You're obviously tapped into my head because you've answered a lot of the questions before I even asked them. But one thing I wanted to mention was banishing, because whenever I use that term, I get such a shock to response. You can't do that. Do you include banishing in your practice?
I do. So what's very popular among, of course, Western practitioners is the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram. So this, of course, comes from the Golden Dawn, which is a group, of course, from your part of the country, part of the world. And, it's a great ritual. It's a great starter ritual. I mean, what the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram does is, you're creating a magic circle, you're banishing things in the four directions, you're, calling upon angelic aid. It's a very simple yet very, very elegant ritual. And it's very useful because, just banishings in general are very useful because you're creating an energetic clean slate. Okay. So just as if you're eating supper and you have a dirty plate, eventually you're going to wash your plate. You're not going to just keep eating off the same dirty plate, right? I mean, that's just
disgusting. We would hope not.
I hope not. If you do, you have problems, bare problems in magic that we can solve. I'll get there. But anyway, our lives in general are more effective when we have less outside influences, and the influences that we work with are the ones that we can control or direct expressions of what we're doing in a positive manner. Okay. That being said, every space we go into can have all sorts of energies into it. It's just in everyone's best interest for your personal sanity, because once again, energy can affect your mental condition. And I mean, how many people have like a dirty room or an untidy or unkempt room and say, wow, I don't feel so good. My thoughts are scattered and I'm not as happy. And if you clean a room, you clean your home, wow, like magic, you start to feel a little better. Guess what, everyone? You just did a banishing ritual, the oldest banishing ritual in Western civilization, the lesser banishing ritual of cleaning the dang room. So congratulations, you're initiated.
No, I like that. I'm not going to do housework ever again. I'm going to do banishings. It sounds so much cooler.
It sounds magical. It's like, hey, Rachel, what were you doing today?
Banishing.
Oh, I was banishing my home. And it's like, oh, wow, your whole home. Like, yeah, I banished the kitchen. I used holy water. I was doing all,
That's much cooler.
You're blessing the water out of the sink, and it's like you're creating holy water, whatever. But,
excellent.
But banishing's very necessary just because you want a place to be neutral. You want yourself to be neutral. You want to be clean. You want things to be good. So that being said, of course, I studied lesser banishing ritual. I was an initiate in a Golden Dawn offshoot here in America. And I have, of course, many friends that are pagan, that are, worship different deities. And, I'll go to people and they're like, I don't feel so good being a pagan and coming from a Judeo-Christian background and summoning archangels and speaking Hebrew. And I'm like, okay. So I actually, for a friend of mine, I did a lesser banishing ritual of the goddess, and I replaced the archangels with different deities, and I even changed some of the terminology. And it's in my archives somewhere. If anyone's really interested, I can probably take me honestly half a day to go through my files. I will find it. I know it's in there somewhere. But anyway, when I was writing my book and I was thinking about banishing, I do a very simple thing at the beginning, talking about how to cleanse a room energetically. It's very, very simple. It's very kind of like a light ban. I mean, any purification is really a light banishing, if you really want to think of it like that. But I wanted to teach banishing rituals, but I didn't want to teach everyone the lesser banishing ritual because it's done over and over again, but also it just doesn't resonate with everyone. I don't want to say it's a relic of the past because, of course I'm studying I've got like books on like Greco-Roman magic on the library somewhere that I'm still going through, but it's not about whether a tool is too old, but it's nice to make things relevant to yourself. And so what I do is I actually break down the elements of a banishing ritual. And because what makes a banishing ritual is banishing with sound, banishing with gesture, using sigils. And I teach everyone basically the components of a banishing ritual. And I say, okay, I've taught you how to banish with like one of these components each. Now that you know how powerful one technique is, well, let's bring them together and make your own banishing ritual. So I'm hoping that in reading the book that people will create their own banishing rituals that are very specific to them, whether it's including different elements, spirits, deities, words, gestures. I mean, I want everyone to be as creative as possible. I mean, I pretty much broke down a banishing ritual to its essential elements so that anyone could create a banishing ritual out of almost anything.
No, I loved it because my original training was Wiccan, and I learnt and performed the banishing rituals hundreds of times. It doesn't fit with my practice now. So I loved the idea that you put in the book of making it more personal and making it work for your own practice. Brilliant. Loved it. So finally, because we could talk for days probably, but we've talked for ages. Any tips on effective spell working for people? There's
actually about half a dozen things I could think of on the top of my head. But honestly, that's almost a different podcast, unfortunately. So I'll give one very, very simple tip. Okay. So in the book, I talk about cord cutting, which is the idea that we create these energetic connections between people, places, things, even things that are less tangible, shall we say. But there's an energetic connection between things. Just like right now, I have an energetic connection to you because we're talking, Rachel, and I have an energetic connection to, of course, people listening to this. So now, all that being said, when we do magic effectively, even less effectively, we're creating an energetic connection between our magic. Okay, so let's say I'm doing, like, once again, the example that I've been using, eating to death, right, the healing candle. Let's say I'm doing a healing candle. Now, I want that person to heal. And let's say, God's help us, maybe they're in the hospital and it's something really, really, really horrible. So in magic, there's this thing called lust of result. Okay? Lust of result. And what lust of result means is that you do a spell or we're working or a ritual, you do something, you do some magic, and after you've done that magic, your current thinking is going to mess up that spell. So for example, let's say I'm doing a healing spell and I'm worried. I'm like, oh my goodness, is poor John who his dog got run over. Now he's in the hospital. Poor John, I want him to get out of the hospital and heal. If I'm worried, if I'm anxious, if I'm feeling anything negative, even if I did like the best healing spell in the world, that energy is going to go back to John, and I might even just ruin everything I did. Okay. So remember I said everything's connected, right? And especially energetically. Obviously, I wrote a book on energy. So if everything's connected energetically, going back to cord cutting is the art of literally cutting or transforming our energetic connections to things. So what I advise everyone to do, and if I could give you one magical tip, if you've been half asleep this entire podcast, wake up. I'm going to give you a tip that's going to make your magic more effective. I promise. And the idea is that you do a spell, afterwards, cut the connection. Just cut the connection. Because what happens is you're going to stop lust of result. You're going to stop any future thoughts after you've done that ritual from influencing the working you just did. And more so, and I'm just going to go there. So I'm not like a lot of other practitioners. I don't believe, for me in my personal practice, I'm not a white witch. I'm not a dark magician. I don't believe in polarities like that. I believe in gray. I'm a very complex person in my personal life, and I believe in nuances and subtleties. Okay, so as such, I do talk about shall we say more offensive magic as including defensive magic. And the simple reason, my personal ethics, I view magic in many ways is like a martial art. So if I'm walking down the street and, let's say you and I, Rachel, we're some friends and some guy comes at us with a knife. Now, I've actually studied Aikido and a couple other martial arts. I can probably take some guy out with a knife. I'll be quite honest. Even though I'm a little out of shape, I could probably take one dude out with a knife. I mean,
I'm glad you're doing it because I couldn't.
Oh, I mean, if it's like 3 or 4 guys, I'll be like, okay, here's my wallet. I mean, I'm not going to fight. You know, I'm not like a superhero. You know, I know tricks. Okay, I'm not that fancy. So, but that being said, you know, sometimes you have to do magic like as a martial art, and you have to defend yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I do put some things that are more like not just psychic self-defense, but psychic offense. So one of the things I teach is like the magical dart, which is kind of a distillation of it's pretty much the energetic effect that I've noticed from like curse work from different cultures. Not to like go into like a really long story, but let's say if you had my experience and let's say you pulled out curses from like a dozen people from like different magical schools, you would say, you know, this is kind of weird. Kind of this stuff that starts looking the same energetically. So what happens is sometimes we actually get energetic projectiles or arrows or darts, or bullets, missiles, however you want to phrase it. We could actually get those lodged in our aura and they can do some serious damage. Now, some of them might come out as like projectiles, kind of like stuck in someone. And some of them might actually come as like tentacles. And I know I'm getting a little like technical here, but they come as tentacles because someone tried to put the whammy on you. They tried to do negative magic or do something negative, but they didn't cut the cord. So, which means you can energetically grab what they did, reconfigure it, return to sender.
Yeah.
So, and I do talk about that in the book, Return to Sender, right? I thought I did. Okay. And sorry, I didn't remember. And
no, I think for anybody listening, but the time between writing a book and it actually being published is a while, and you do tend to forget sometimes what's in it.
Okay. I swear I did. Like I was like where's my glasses? Where's my glasses? But going back to the magical dart, you know, I teach that exercise because sometimes you're going to have to diffuse a situation with magic in a more offensive way. Now, then that's just kind of the way it goes. But if anyone is doing like a magical dart, please, for the love of gods, like I was saying, cut that connection so someone doesn't do return to sender on you. Okay? Now, I know people are like, wow, Mark, you've just kind of like escalated magical warfare by like, you know, a whole different level. But I'm not saying this. I'm not teaching all this stuff for everyone to like have a gripe with someone that's like, oh, John gets out of the hospital after I did a healing candle for him. Now he wants to go do curse work on the guy that stole his wife. I don't want John to do that necessarily, but I will leave everyone's ethics to themselves. Okay, I hereby absolve myself of all karma from anything happens for anyone reading my book. But at the same time, have some fun, get your hands dirty, and you know, work magic. Your life is only going to get better.
I really don't want to be John, though. John's having a really...
I know, John is horrible.
John's having a really hard time at the moment.
He's having a rough day, so...
Now, if you can just...
And I'm just going to banish that, so in case there's someone named John out there, and like, he's like, well, you know, my wife's been looking at the garbage man kind of funny lately, and my dog's been getting out on the street. I'm like, okay, let me just get banished this idea of poor John before anything happens.
I don't mind about the other stuff, but keep the dog safe.
Keep the dog safe.
Yeah. That has been fascinating, but one very, very last question, if I can.
Perfect.
The Invisible College. Would you like to tell us about the Invisible College?
Sure. So the inspiration for the Invisible College came from a couple different places. One, if you do research on what the Invisible College is, it was the idea that different practitioners would just get together and collaborate and talk about magic and like make, you know, increase their study and knowledge base. But also there's, and this is going to be kind of funny, everyone's going to be like, oh, geez, Mark. There's, you know, one of the schools of magic that I worked with a lot is chaos magic. And what chaos magic really is, it's really a misnomer. But chaos magic is really pop magic, where you can use, like, for example, a very good chaos. I did a class on chaos magic. And during the class on chaos magic, I asked people to get possessed I taught people how to get possessed by different entities and spirits by the end of it. And one of the practitioners there, she was possessed by the doctor. Like, I think it was like the Matt Smith doctor, her version of the Matt Smith doctor. And, I'm a big Whovian, so I'm hoping that there's some Whovians over there.
I'm with you. Peter Capaldi for me, but Matt Smith.
Oh, Capaldi's amazing.
Matt Smith's good.
Oh my God, his speeches his monologue. Oh man, I could just eat popcorn, listen to Peter Capaldi for days.
He has the best eyebrows.
Oh my God, his eyebrows. Thank your eyebrows. Yeah. Oh God. So this practitioner was possessed by her impression of Matt Smith's doctor. And that's something you can do in chaos magic and pop magic all the time. You can use pop culture and use things that aren't like standard occult things in your practice. And you can use them very effectively. Okay. But where I'm going with this, my tangents do actually kind of go somewhere usually. Not all the time. Usually. But where I was talking with this is that there's a comic book writer named Grant Morrison who's British, and he did a comic book called The Invisibles. And in The Invisibles, they travel to different astral places, and one place they go to is the Invisible College. Now, I do a lot of astral work. I talk about it a little bit in the book, but I'm actually working on another book on like astral magic. It's probably going to be done for a few years, to be quite frank and honest. But I will travel astrally to these different places. And one time I was just kind of going around and, I was just kind of journeying and exploring because I like to explore. And that's how you learn. You learn by doing. And I actually found this spiritual place that was the Invisible College. Like, no joke. And I'm there and there's practitioners from like, there's a guy in like a Greek toga and there's like somebody who looks like they're out of the Renaissance. And I'm like, I'm crazy. And I thought I had lost my mind. Like, when you do magic for a while, you have to have like some sort of foundation. You say, okay, is it magic or am I crazy? And so you got to have like some sort of like foundation and like say, okay, is magic all just applied psychology with like fancy tools, or is there some woo-woo mystical stuff going on? And I tried to be in the middle. So that being said, I was actually at the Invisible College and I was interacting with some people, and that's a whole different story. And I realized, I said I was in an offshoot of the Golden Dawn. So in when you're initiating the Golden Dawn, they give you what's called a magical motto. It's like your magical name, and it's in Latin. And my magical motto is Teneo Junctum, which means to know unity or to know connection. Which is funny because that's like everything I do. And like, I even worship like Anansi, an African spider god. And like, when you worship a spider god, it's all about connections, let me tell you. So anyway, that being said, got to go back. I know on a lot of different threads here, is that with the Invisible College, I realized being initiated in the Golden Dawn. In the Golden Dawn, they say, oh, we're communing with the Ascended Masters to get your magical motto. And the Ascended Masters have taught us and guided us this thing. And I'll be honest, when I got initiated in the Golden Dawn, I thought they're all full of junk. I'm like, there's no Ascended Masters. Like, give me a break, guys. Like, this is a great party trick. You guys just probably rolled the dice and came up with some funky Latin. And I realized over the years that magical motto is who I am. It is the work I do. And I realized after going to the Invisible College that the Ascended Masters were actually kind of real. And that all the Ascended Masters really, they're the ancestors of us. They're our spiritual ancestors. They're the magical practitioners that have passed beyond the veil that guide us and give us intuition. You ever like go to a library or a bookstore and like for some weird reason, like one book pops out?
Yeah.
And you leave and you go back to the bookstore. You're like, oh, I'd have too many books. Like
never.
I know, Rachel, I bet you resonate with this because like all practitioners have too many damn books.
There's never too many books. Never.
There's never the stack of my foot and my feet, the amount of bookcases. But if anyone's ever gone to a bookstore and there's like one book that always captures your eye, or there might be like a stranger that comes to you and they say something that's really scintillating and really, really it's really relevant. It's really relevant to what you're thinking or feeling, or even giving you like some sort of weird spiritual lesson. So I would argue very strongly that these ancestors, I like to call them the alumni of the Invisible College, these spiritual practitioners, and I don't think they even call themselves masters because they're all still students, right? They're they're just, dead people waiting to reincarnate and do some more magic on this physical plane, really. So, but the invisible college to me is talking about us practitioners here on Earth and this invisible college of sharing information. Like this podcast, I would argue, it's part of the invisible college of sharing information and sharing knowledge. They're going on these different places on the astral, going to different classes. We're all learning stuff at our own pace, guided by ourselves, guided by our higher selves, guided by our instincts, but in many ways, I think guided by the practitioners that have passed on. So the idea of the invisible college is recognizing the future and the past, living in the dead. And the Latin motto for the invisible college is the dead instruct the living, if anyone is curious. So the aim of the invisible college is to really preserve knowledge, but also to help our magical and spiritual communities. So I've got a major plan for that. So right now, I'm actually giving 10% of my book royalties to the invisible college. 10%. And I'm going to make it so that between now and while books are still being published, they're still printing my books and people are still buying my books, long after I'm dead, hopefully, that those royalty monies will still go to the invisible college. Now, half of that money, 5% of all my royalties, is going directly to like domestic violence shelters for women and women's circles and things like that, because I have to acknowledge a couple things. That one, I'm a guy and I have made some stupid guy mistakes, and I have made some stupid guy mistakes in relationships, and I just want to own them.
Oh, we've all done it.
Yeah, right.
We've all done it.
We've all done it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel bad as I've gone through like more spiritual alchemy and as more self-realization and more shadow work, I've realized, man, I really made some mistakes. I hurt some people, and I wish I could make amends to them directly, but I can't, but what I can do is I can put out more good and try to than negative I did. And I know I'm doing that, and I know I'm just kind of dealing with guilt at this point. I want to acknowledge that I want to give back to women, but also in Wiccan witchcraft circles, a lot of my audience are going to be female. And just as if I was a movie star or a professional athlete, I would want to give back to my community. I want to acknowledge, the role of women and the role that, women play in my success. And I want to give back directly. I want to acknowledge that, and I want to give back. So that's why half of the invisible college money is going directly towards that. The other half is going towards stuff like a national pagan scholarship. Right now, just in America, but, we'll see. And a suicide prevention line specifically for pagans and witches and occultists. I'm also doing stuff. I'm going to actually work on an elder archive. So I talked about Dr. Savage and how Dr. Savage had this amazing magical work. I mean, like, seriously, this guy could bilocate. He actually was in two places at the same time, okay? This dude was the real deal, okay? But I don't have access to his papers. My first Reiki master and my shaman teacher, Sean Clark, he's passed. Man was effing brilliant. He was a brilliant practitioner. He was amazing. And he's gone. And so I want to I'll try to talk to some of his people, some of our mutual acquaintances. But what I want to do is, before people pass on the next incarnation, I want to try to collect their stuff, especially if they're not going to write books. I create an archive that people can work through their work. So once again, the dead instruct the living, and we're all going to die eventually, and eventually we're going to be the ancestors to the future generations. So that's some of the stuff the Invisible College is going to do. It's actually registered nonprofit here in America. I'm working on some other paperwork so we can actually accept donations. But I'm going to make that transparent, because here's the other thing. I've seen too many people in occults and pagan circles say, I have a nonprofit, I'm going to do work, and they have no documentation. They aren't doing the work. Specifically, I'm not going to name their names, but there's one nonprofit that says, oh, we work against sex trafficking, and we're really working to help women, and they do nothing. All they do, if you look on their website, I'm not going to name their names because that's not polite, but they're not doing the work they're setting out to do. And whatever money they're doing, who knows where it goes? I have no idea. And so I'm going to have screenshots of my, as a Moonbooks author, I have a portal that shows how much my royalties are. I'm going to get a snapshot of my royalties. Then I'm going to have a snapshot of my bank account. of the Invisible College's bank account. And you're probably even like my bank account for that line item, I imagine. I'll work it out later, but the point being, I'm going to show transparently where the money's going, that I'm actually walking my talk here. And I hope not only to do good in the world, but, I'm going to be honest, I'm trying to lead by example. And I'll lead by example one way or the other. I'll lead by example by saying, look, I'm doing good in the world and you can do it too. Or I'm going to say, look, I'm being transparent and you're not. You really need to up your game.
Which sounds like a perfect way to finish. Thank you so much, Mark. Absolutely fascinating. Sure. And the book is brilliant for anyone, whether you are a beginner or advanced or long in the tooth like me. You'll learn something from it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me on here. This has been wonderful.
You have been listening to the Pagan Portal Podcast, a Moonbooks Publishing production. For more information, please visit our website.